Marvel Rivals is a very fast-paced game with a lot of action always happening, tons of ultimates going on at the same time, and you need to land your shots and nail your abilities to close out the match and end up winning and climbing through the ranks. But what if I told you that there are a few key settings for you to change? I'm talking some hidden settings, a few lesser known tricks that you can easily tweak that will allow you to not only improve your aim but also your overall experience and enjoyment in Marvel Rivals so that you can have a better time, win more games, and climb through the ranks even faster. Because let me tell you, if your aim sucks in Marvel Rivals, you might not entirely be the reason for it. And if you know me from my Monster Hunter videos, this is the type of content that a lot of viewers look forward to. So let's dive deep into some of the biggest changes that you can make to improve your experience. Now, before we start talking about crosshairs and how to improve your aim with a few settings and tweaks, I want to recommend you all to change this one setting, and that has to do with the HUD widget size. By default, this is the size of all of your HUD elements, and you can change it to make a little bit smaller if you want to, like this, though me personally, I would recommend you all to change it all the way to large. It doesn't make a huge difference, but it allows you to better track your cooldowns with a really quick glance at the screen, and it doesn't take a lot of real estate out of the HUD, so I think it's just better to have this setting set to large scale, as it is going to be more valuable for you. Now, another very important setting is of course going to be your crosshair. By default, you're going to get this very wonky reticle that I personally just hate, though thankfully you're able to change it, and you're actually even able to assign different crosshairs for different characters if you want to, though I would recommend you to keep the same one across all characters. Now, if you come here, you can change from having this to just having a circle, changing it to crosshairs, just having this dot, or having this circle with the crosshairs around it, and of course you can disable this animation, which I would recommend everyone to do. And there really is a lot that you can change. You can pretty much remove the dot, make it as small as you want to, increase the width of the crosshairs like this, change the size of the outline, and even totally change the color of your crosshairs. Me personally, I like to always keep it green or maybe purple, kind of like this. So if you want to copy my settings for my crosshairs, this is everything that I have, though of course you should try to change it to tailor it to your preferences. And as I told you early on in the video, the reason why you're missing your shots in Marvel Rivals, even though it feels like you should be hitting your shots, is for a very simple reason. Now, for one, keep in mind that this game, because of the third-person action camera, you should make sure that you slightly tweak your aim always to the right of the enemy, because as you can see from this clip right here, whenever I shoot to the left of the enemy's head, I am clearly missing. However, if I shoot to the right of the enemy's head, even though it looks like I am missing, it's actually counting as if all of my shots are landing. So this is very important for you to nail down. But that's not it, because Marvel Rivals has built-in mouse acceleration. It's a setting that is known to not be very reliable, as it is going to automatically adjust your sensitivity higher or lower depending on how fast you are moving your mouse. And sadly, the game does not have an option to turn this setting off, but there is a way for you to turn this off in the game's files. Do not worry, this is a very simple process which I'm going to be showing you. Open up the game files by going to the destination on screen, that is app data local Marvel saved config windows, and there you're going to find a text file that you're going to need to change. Simply enter this script at the very bottom of the notepad and make sure that you save before you close it. And once you do, go into the file's properties by right-clicking it and set it to read only. And once you go back into Marvel Rivals, you're going to feel like you're going to be landing a lot more shots because this unreliable setting that is mouse acceleration has been turned off. Hopefully the devs do something about this and you don't need to go into the game's files to actually change it. Now, one key setting that you definitely want to change is by going here into the combat mix. You're going to want to make sure that you select the focus setting, as this is going to change the way that sound works in the game by muting a lot of the sounds that are there just for the immersive experience, such as music in the background, the wind passing through you, the birds chirping. All of that is going to get reduced. And instead, the game is going to put a lot more emphasis on spatial audio feedback. That is, everything that is related to combat, if an enemy is nearby you, if you're being shot at, all of that is going to get a lot more focus and is going to allow you to identify any nearby enemies a lot more easily. And given how much visual and audio noise there can be in the game, especially with everyone spamming ultimates in a big fight, a setting like this can really make a big difference. effects. Then you have the hit indicator volume. This is going to change the volume of whenever you hit an enemy, so I would encourage you to bump it up to maybe 5. And the material layer volume, which is the different sound effects that you get whenever you hit enemies that have different materials. For example, Groot, you get a very distinct sound effect whenever you hit him. I would personally reduce this a little bit because it's not that important. And out of all of these other sound effects, I like to slightly increase the healing sound effect, both when I am healing other allies or when I am being healed. I also like to increase the damage volume all the way to the maximum so that I can more quickly react whenever I'm getting shot at, as the human brain tends to react faster to sound than to image. And I personally also bump down the announcer volume all the way down. Now this setting is also extremely important, and I think that everyone should enable it, as it is disabled by default. And that is announce when a teammate is KO'd. These two settings are quite simply going to give you a unique sound cue whenever one of your teammates is KO'd or whenever an enemy is knocked out. And this is of course extremely important so that you are always aware of the status of everyone around you. So maybe you are playing someone like Psylocke, you are deep in the enemy backline, going for a flank, and maybe you get a kill or two. But as the third enemy approaches, you hear the sound effects of a lot of your allies being knocked out. Well, that would be the perfect cue, letting you know that maybe you should get the hell out of there before you are also knocked out as well. And it's also important to know whenever the enemy is KO'd, because if you are in a big push and your team gets 1 or 2 kills, that can allow you and your team to dive the rest of the enemy team, score a few more kills, and allow the objective to be pushed a lot more easily. And to further make sure that all of these sound effects are going to be crystal clear, and to get the biggest advantage possible, if you are playing with headphones, make sure to select headphones right here and enable the 3D enhancement, as this is going to give you a lot more spatial awareness and will allow you to track down the enemy's movements, know if they are behind a wall or in front of you, before you even get a chance to see them. So this is another big advantage that you should definitely change. Now the following setting is one that I think a lot of people value, though it is going to be fairly subjective. If you come over here to the accessibility settings, not only are you able to enable colorblind mode, but you're also able to change the HP bars of your allies as well as your enemies. So maybe you prefer to keep it pink or purple, kind of like this, or you want to keep the colors by default, but maybe you prefer to change the HP bar from being white to green like this. Or what I think a lot of people are going to find useful is the shield HP bar, because you might be fighting an enemy and then you see them get a shield, and despite being an enemy, they're going to get a blue HP bar, which a lot of people tend to associate with an ally, but of course you can change it to a purple, for example, if that makes things easier for you. Again, this is all subjective, but I know there's some people that like to change the colors of their HUD. Me personally, I like to keep everything default, but at least you have this option. Now a couple of other settings that you might want to change to increase your overall performance so that you can have a better experience with the game is by going over here into the display settings. You're going to want to change the anti-aliasing depending on your graphics card, so if you have an Nvidia, you want the Nvidia DLSS, and if you have an AMD graphics card, you want the AMD FSR. You can also turn on the frame generation mode, again depending on whichever graphics card you're using, and this is actually going to allow your game to stabilize a lot more, especially whenever there are Doctor Strange portals, which is the source for a lot of FPS issues for a lot of players. So try that out and see if your FPS is going to improve. Now another thing that you can do that I have seen especially the old Overwatch pros and streamers do is to turn down all of these settings. And I really do mean turn them down to low. When you do this, the game is of course going to look a lot worse, but by doing this you're going to be simplifying a lot of textures and even removing some foliage out of the way. That sometimes is going to allow you to more easily identify and spot an enemy, and even though it might not make a huge difference, it can actually impact some of your games. So it is up to you if you want to keep your graphics low and your game looking a little bit worse, with the trade-off being that you might occasionally get a kill or two out of it. Now the next few settings are regarding a few special hotkeys, how you can change them and how they're going to interact with different characters, as well as a few character specific settings that you definitely want to change to improve your experience. Now if you come over here into the keyboard settings, you can see that you're able to select one specific character, like let's take Iron Fist for example, and you can have some unique specific settings tied to them. But additionally, you can also change the keybinds for this character alone. So for example, even though my reload key is set to the R button, Iron Fist does not have a reload, which means that if I wanted to, I could for example set it up so that my right click, the Dragon's Defense, becomes the R button, and that is not going to interfere with any of my reload settings for all of the other characters. So if I press the R key, I'm going to get my right click. Pretty simple. So for example, the F key that is very important for a lot of characters like Mantis, that gives her the self buff, that one is not present for, let's say, Psylocke or Magic. So I change it so that my F key becomes a melee attack. And the melee attack is actually very important for a lot of these characters like Psylocke, Magic, Black Panther and so many others, because they have a lot of one-shot combos that involve melee cancels. That is to say that whenever you do a left click, you can input a melee attack right after, and that is going to give you extra damage, of course. So for example, for Magic, a very simple one-shot combo would be this right here, and that involves the melee cancel that I talked about. So again, keep in mind that you can change some of these settings without actually overriding the keys that you use for different characters. That being said, as I explained before, some characters do get character-specific settings that you definitely want to change. And one such character is Captain America. His sprint or his shift is by far one of the most important abilities that he has, and you pretty much always want to be in this state so that you can jump into the enemies, do the big dive. There's really no reason for you to not be running all of the time. So one setting that you can change with them is to remove the hold to dash to simply becoming a toggle. So if I press shift, the captain is always going to be running. Even if I stop and then I go back to sprinting, it's always going to be running. And if I want him to stop running, I simply press shift and he's back to regularly running like this. And another two characters that you probably already know you should change their settings are going to be Spider-Man and Venom. And that is regarding their web swing, because it becomes a lot better if you change one particular setting. By default with Spider-Man you're going to get the automatic swing, and by default with Venom you're going to have easy swing turned on. Make sure that you turn these off, because what these settings do is that, for example, if you're not targeting anything that you can swing to, the game is going to automatically grab anything and swing in that direction, kind of like this. And even if you're aiming at the ground, as you can see right there, I'm not going to swing at the ground. I'm going to swing at a nearby rooftop and something like that. And especially with Spider-Man, that is a very agile character, you definitely do not want this. So make sure that you turn off the automatic swing, so that if you want to, you can simply target the ground like this, and that can allow you to be a lot more nimble. And also if you target, for example, the sky and there's nothing for you to grapple to, you're simply not going to waste the cooldown, which is pretty good. Now another change that you might want to change that is only available for the strategists, and you need to select each different strategist if you want to enable this setting, is the healing reticle feedback. By turning this on, whenever you heal a teammate like this, you're going to get these green indicators letting you know that you are healing them. Me personally, I kind of dislike this effect. Yes, it does let you know that you are healing your allies, but it kind of gets in the way a little bit. It is too big of a HUD element in my opinion, so me personally, I like to keep it off. Now the reason why I am on Luna Snow is to show you a pretty cool tip that you can change that is again tied to the settings, and that is if you select one of your ultimate key abilities to your mouse wheel, what this allows you to do is after you turn it on, you can simply keep on scrolling the mouse wheel and you're going to toggle between the two different modes, the healing and the damage amp, and this is actually going to provide the benefit of both modes at the same time. So unless you are getting hit by a huge ultimate, you can simply do this to get the best of both worlds, provide your team with a lot of damage and also a lot of healing at the same time. Just make sure that you also have the hold to toggle performance disabled, and again bind the ultimate ability to the mouse wheel, as you're going to get a lot of benefit out of this. And the final character specific setting that I want to show you is regarding the characters that can wall ride or wall climb like Iron Fist or even Jeff and a few others. Again, select the character you want to change. Now for Iron Fist you only have the ability to hold to climb, and if you disable the setting you can make it so that you can simply jump to a wall and you're going to instantly be running it. I personally do not like having this setting on, but it is an option that you can have if you dislike having to hold a button to keep him while riding. Now with Jeff the Land Shark, things are a little bit different, as you have the option to toggle the hold to dive option, hold to wall crawl, and hold to exit the riding ability. So by default, if you want to go up this wall, all you need to do is press spacebar, and you can let go of spacebar and you are now on top of this wall. But if you want to make it the same way that I have the Iron Fist by default, you select the hold to dive, for example. So as long as I hold down shift, I'm going to be underwater, but if I release shift, I'm going to come out of it. Because I have shift tied to my mouse button as well, I personally actually think that this is a better setting because it allows you to be a lot more reactive, as you don't need to press another button to get out of it, you simply need to let go of the button you are already pressing. And the hold to wall crawl is pretty much exactly what we talked about with the Iron Fist, where if you are holding down the button you can ride on this wall, and the moment you let go, you're going to come out of it. But then you have the direction of the wall crawling, which you can actually change it from being advanced vertically upwards, meaning that whenever you are here on the wall, the direction that it's going to change is depending on your WASD, your movement keys that is. But if you change it to advanced towards crosshair, if you keep holding W, the shark is simply going to follow the direction of your crosshair. So maybe you prefer this and you like to be a lot more accurate like this, then this would be the way to go about it. Me personally, I like to keep it default so that, for example, I can move left but still be looking at the right side of the screen to see where my enemies are coming from. But that again is all up to personal preference. As I told you, there are a lot of settings for you to tweak and change in Marvel Rivals, and these are some of the biggest settings that you can change to have a big impact on your game, and hopefully you'll be able to not only improve the performance of the game but also how well you do, especially in the aiming department, and improve your overall experience and enjoyment of the game. As I said, I've been having a ton of fun with Marvel Rivals, climbing up the ranks and trying to reach Diamond, so I will be making a lot more guides for you guys, so if you are excited for all of that, please subscribe to the channel as it helps me out a lot. With that being said, my name is Dark Hero, and thank you all so much for watching.